Hey guys, Zane here with another one take review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Milli album, You Still Here Ho? You Still Here Ho is the first full-length studio album from rapper, singer, and musician all around Milli, as well as the follow-up to her debut mixtape, Ho, Why Is You Here? As you can see, there's some correlation between those two titles, and I mean, yeah, it's nice, the continuity. I can respect that, and it kind of makes sense in a way, as this record does feel like just a more evolved continuation of her mixtape. Said mixtape was solid, and while Ho, Why Is You Here definitely didn't deserve the place that it got on the Rolling Stone Best Hip Hop Albums of All Time list, it was still a strong listen that I still would recommend a couple of years after it being released now, and in those couple of years, her first full length has been something that's been pretty hyped up, and her fan base has been very, very excited for waiting for an album like this to finally drop, and what their fan base is left with is something solid. It's not totally perfect or anything, and there are a couple of unremarkable moments, but it's a strong release nonetheless. Milli is a very polarizing figure within rap music and general pop music in general, even on an individualistic scale, because she heavily embraces this sort of hypersexuality that has been very present within the realm of mainstream rap music in the past year or two, and I think that's a very important artistic decision for her to make, as it completely alters the course of this record. It means that You Still Here Ho is a constantly fun, upbeat, engaging kind of record that has a non-stop party-like quality about it that only slows down for a couple more serious, introspective tracks, and that's something that really does define Milli's sound at this point in her career. That being said, it's a also relatively predictable style, which ultimately in turn means that Milli doesn't have a lot unique to say either. I'm not expecting top-notch lyricism from someone like Kendrick Lamar on a Milli album, but other similar hypersexualized female rappers like Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B have been spitting very similar bars to Milli, and in a more unique way too, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, Milli definitely does have this sort of brattiness in her vocals that does kind of make her stand out in a way, but I just think that a lot of her peers have this sound down a bit more than she does. While she does have the admittedly very valid excuse that this is just the beginning of her career, it doesn't prevent the fact that this just isn't a unique sound from existing. Now, that being said, you could also argue that Milli is a significantly more connectable and, well, generally likable person than the majority of similar artists out there right now. That does not mean that she is perfect, however. She's actually far from it on a couple of tracks here. There are a handful of songs on You Still Here Ho that have uninteresting and unremarkable instrumentals, leaving the listener to just absorb as much as Milli's performance as possible, and she can be a bit much at times, to say the least, and it especially is true when I say that she kind of has no control over the energy and delivery of her performance overall, leaving something that isn't necessarily obnoxious, but is about as close that you can get to it without actually being obnoxious. This is very well shown with especially weak cuts like the single No Face and also the album opening Come Outside, both of which really add nothing to the album overall and are easily the two weakest cuts here. But when Milli restrains herself and gives a bit more of a striking performance, she can easily be one of the most engaging MCs that you've heard in pop rap all year. Songs like Hottie or Pretty Girls are actually significantly more self-contained, and that's a great thing because she manages to shine more as a performer alongside strong instrumentals, albeit basic instrumentals, but strong instrumentals nonetheless, and it all kind of works out for the better that way. Those are actually a bit more common than the over-the-top performances, and the moments where she is over-the-top are pretty few and far between, which is something I'm thankful for, as it makes for a relatively consistent album just with a couple of weak spots here or there, which I suppose is to be expected with this kind of territory. As I said before, while the instrumentals on You Still Here Ho are basic, they are also very, very solid as well and perfectly fit the style of music that Milli is going for. Much of the instrumentals here are trap-adjacent pop rap, and with Milli's southern classic style of vocal delivery and bars, I think that it all honestly works out in the end again. I think that everything just meshes together very well and complements each other extremely well. After all, there really just isn't much to complain about here. Everything is kind of just strong, nothing more, nothing less in terms of actual instrumentals. And I mean, complaining about pretty basic sounding pop rap instrumentals on a Flo Milli album would be like complaining about a UK grime rapper sounding too English in their delivery. It's what the sound is meant to be, and it's just a matter of how well it's executed. And frankly, I think that all the boxes are checked on this album. There are also expectedly a couple of features on You Still Hear Ho, but I have to admit that with the sort of hot streak of popularity that she's been facing lately, I would have expected Milli to do more collaborations here. Not that I really mind, I'm pretty indifferent on the matter myself, but still it is definitely less than what I predicted, as there are only 2 features here. Those 2 features are Babyface Ray on Hottie, as well as Rico Nasty on Payday. Ray's verse is weak in comparison to Milli, and the chemistry between the two is virtually non-existent. You could even argue that their 2 respective styles combat each other more than they do complement each other, which is especially not good considering that track is heavily based around this chemistry that the 2 performers on it are meant to have. And while Rico's chemistry with Milli isn't exactly explosive, their respective styles of delivery and overall personas definitely complement each other a lot more. Honestly, I kind of get why there aren't a lot of features on here. They can be a tricky thing, and I mean, there are times where features can kill a song, or even if you have a lot of features that are just not good as the main performer, then they can kill an entire album. But at the same time, I kind of feel like it would have been worth the risk to spice things up here a little bit and give the listener a break from the constant onslaught of Flo Milli and You Still Hear Ho with just a couple of guest verses here or there. I'm not asking for every track to be just filled to the brim with appearances from other rappers and other musicians, and I also do understand that this record is meant to be sort of Flo Milli's own demonstration of what she's capable of doing in a non-mixtape setting, but at the same time, it still does kind of begin to get a little gray and just blend together after a while, with absolutely no one to break it up except 2 less than spectacular verses from other people who are not quite as good as Flo Milli in the first place. So overall, You Still Hear Ho is a solid follow-up to Ho Why Is You Here. Both of the Ho albums are actually shockingly solid. Although not a masterclass by any means, Milli proves that she is capable of making a solid performance with a nice continuation of a sound that she once demonstrated a couple years back. I'm going to give this album 3.5 stars out of 5. My one take on this album is that You Still Hear Ho is far from perfect, but it still has enough club-ready bangers and a general strong engagement level from Flo Milli herself for the rapper to make it out of her first full-length album with a strong performance overall. So again, 3.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.